Hey guys, really loving all the support that you're giving me and my channel, Serious and Silliness. Please hit that like button and that subscribe button. The like button really helps the algorithm and it helps more people enjoy the content just like you enjoy it. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, share it with friends, and enjoy the rest of the content. Thank you, fellas. Later. So we got William Steele, who is from my old neighborhood in Brooklyn and now is a reality TV star, but also served time in prison. How the hell did that happen?
That's what happened when you steal your professional jewel and art thief. I was a locksmith. I grew up in New York, and I went bad. I started doing heists all over across the United States. So I did 18 years, and part of that was for escape. So,
well, let's before we get, we're going to get into. Well, we're going to get into that. I definitely want to get into that with you because that's a very interesting story.
Right.
But I want to know how you went from doing 18 years to prison to having a reality show on A&E.
Well, one of the top reality shows in the country. I'm humbled to say it's on TikTok today. It shot up another 100,000 views. It went to 10.9 million views.
It's amazing.
And, me just getting out of prison, I didn't even know what the hell TikTok was or views or subscribers. But it's a long story. I grew up in New York, and I always wanted to be this guy that can do it. My mother was mentally ill, so I was always defending her, sticking up for her, sticking up for women, this and that. And I ended up, a friend of mine died. I tried some coke. I got in a little bit of trouble. But even prior to that, I was in college. I was going to Kingsborough Community College. And then after that, I went to New York School of Locksmithing, Safes, and Alarms. And I learned about alarm systems and locksmithing and all that. And so when I started getting pretty, involved with cocaine and some other illegal things, I used those skills and I became a very prolific, jewel and art thief. And I was going all around the country doing that. For a time, I was running kilos and guns out of South Florida to New York, all through the 80s, part of the 90s. And so I ended up getting in trouble here and there, and I ended up serving time in New York, Florida. I got transferred. I was in a Supermax and basically isolation for 4 years, 23/7 lockdown because I'm an extreme escape risk. And so no matter where I went, I'd get the black box and the shackles and the freaking electric belt where they could electrocute you. Instead of going anywhere with 2 officers, there was usually 6 or 8 officers escorting me if I had to go outside the prison for any reason. So, I went through all that. And anyway, before the escape, it was nothing fancy. It was really just a walk-off. But because of who I am, my background, it made it to America's Most Wanted website. And so while I was incarcerated, I was always doing positive things. I lost a lot of things on the outside, obviously, that we all lose. And my mother passed away, and I was taking college courses and everything. And I was just, I got involved with I became a law clerk. I became a tutor, and I started writing books, a book about my life and things I've, been doing just with the idea, not to glorify my crimes or anything, but with the idea to really help other people and try to tell my stories in a way that would maybe reach kids, help kids. And so in the middle of writing my books, there was very prominent people that I encountered over all my decades of doing illegal things. And some of them became very infamous. You got Robert Durst, Ghislaine Maxwells. I knew them. I had various dealings with these people over the years. And so my friend, who's one of the editors at the National Enquirer, and he's a true crime author, he said, look, we're writing your book, but these stories that you were just going to mention in your book, you might as well do whole books about them. So I put out a book called Sex and the Serial Killer, My Bizarre Times with Robert Durst, the wealthiest serial killer in American history. You can find it on my website there or on Amazon. I put that out. It was doing good while I was in prison. Even Nancy Grace covered it on her podcast while I was still in prison. And so that book was doing well. I'm friends with Kathy Durst's family members. I don't know if you know much about his first murder and probably his first murder in 1982, but in Westchester County. So his family controls a lot of New York City real estate, including managing the World Trade Center complex to this day. So there were billions of dollars, and I went up against them and basically exposed Robert Durst for what he was in my book and some of my experiences with him and the women he would have, at my place, cocaine I gave him and this and that. And then he started getting weirder and weirder around me, and I distanced myself. So I wrote this book. It was doing well. Well, just before my release, somebody told me, hey, there's interest from A&E Network for doing a docu-series about people coming out of prison who are not going to be living with family members, and what the struggles are like getting back on your feet after a long time in prison. So I served 18 years for nonviolent crimes, and I said, okay, I'm going to do a true crime channel anyway, which I have now, William Steele True Crime on YouTube, and my podcast, William Steele True Crime. And really, a lot of it's about profiling cases of actual innocence. I'm going to be doing a case of a biker who's actually in prison in New Jersey, and he's innocent. We're going to be profiling his case. He's a one percenter. Um, I don't ascribe to that lifestyle, but at the same time, if a man's innocent in prison, he deserves all the voice and platform he can get. So we're helping a doctor, Dr. Leslie Marlin Scholl. He was entrapped. So my channel is really also about reform stories, like redemption stories, guys who turned their life around. So I was going to start the channel anyway. So I was like, a docu-series about recidivism, about the risk of going back to prison if you're not living with family. Okay, fair enough. I signed up for it. Little did I know, the second I got out after 18 years in the middle of the pandemic, like I didn't think I was going to live to make it out after 18 years. People were dying all around me at the prison.
Right.
And I was getting like really miserable at the time. I was like, holy crap, man, I served all this time. I'm not going to make it out of here. And I was like months away from release. I get out and this camera's in my face, from A&E and Sharp Entertainment. Shout out to my producer, Joe Ruzer. He got nominated for an Emmy Award. But so from the day of my release, after all those years in prison, like there's no sleep, no rest for me, none. My every move was, being captured. And so they want to see the process, man. I come out looking like crap, and you can't get a haircut. I had gained 100 pounds because we were locked down so long. We were just like totally, the whole prison was locked down because so many people were sick. And I got out in that condition and I wasn't feeling it at that time. I was, but in the end, it blew up. We filmed 10 episodes already, and it blew up to be the number 2 reality show in the country. Now, they have other shows, other reality shows, and other like 48 Hours and 60 Days In. It's a very popular show on A&E. Yeah. My show comes right after 60 Days In. And it killed 60 Days In, one of their top shows in the ratings. It just destroyed it.
Okay.
So I was on TMZ with Harvey Levin. That got 7 million views across all platforms. And I'm like, holy crap. And this is good for my books because I've put out books about Ghislaine Maxwell and Robert Durst, and I got more books coming out. So it's good for my true crime stuff. And A&E has been very, very tolerant in that I'm doing my own thing. Sure. And I always mention everything in a favorable light because even though I had some struggles with the people I was living with, in the end it was a good experience and a lot of good exposure. So,
how did they negotiate the contract while you were still in prison?
Well, I can't really get into contractual things, but there are regulations about not really being able to do that. So it's my understanding that most things are signed the moment you get out, sort of thing. Okay. Because you're not really supposed to enter into contract with prisoners. So,
yeah, I was going to say because if you're going from prison right into the reality show,
right?
How did you do that? I mean, you're talking about 18 years in prison. You're out of touch for the most part. I mean, it's different now. You have computers in prison and so on and so forth, but and then you go right into a reality series. I mean, you're going from one extreme to the next. How'd you deal with that?
I was real tired, man, for a long time. I got out of shape, man. I put on this weight, and I have a bad ankle to begin with, and I was just beat down and exhausted all the time. I didn't know that the lady of the house, who's on the show, these are very strict Seventh-day Adventists. I was writing this lady for about 5 years, and I didn't know how crazy she was until I moved in, and that she had a crush on me.
Well, I mean, out of all the street sense you got, you didn't realize that she was nuts when she was going back and forth with a prisoner? And
no, man, our letters were like completely innocuous, like polite. She was sending me scriptures and very encouraging letters, and telling me about her life and her marriage troubles, and I was always just being cordial. Hey, thanks for writing. I'm working on my books. I can't wait to get the hell out of here. Blah blah blah. And I think the most thing that might have been something that might have given her the idea that I might have been interested was I'd say stuff like, hey, when I get out, I'd love to meet a Christian woman like you. But I knew she was married. So I wasn't saying it to, but I didn't know at the time that she was going through a lot of crap in her marriage. So I guess I don't know, man. But if you look at the first episode, I'm not there when they're filming in her kitchen. I'm in prison. It's like the day before my release, and they're filming her. The reality show crew is already at the house, and I'm just being recorded. And she says, Bill, what do you want to do as soon as I pick you up? And I'm goofing around. I say, let's take off to Miami for 3 days, before we head up to Indiana. And well, I'm from Brooklyn, but I was living in it, going to live with her in Indiana. And so her husband runs across the kitchen. Her face lights up, all excited, like she's in love. I didn't see this till I saw it on TV, almost a year later.
So you didn't realize that this lady had some kind of crush on you throughout the whole time while you guys were pen pals, and that she was complaining to you about her husband the whole time.
No, I thought she was just confiding to me like a friend,
But William, that blows me away. You're a street dude, right? You're from Brooklyn. You're from the same neighborhood as me. She's got plenty of friends on the outside.
Well, here's the thing. You don't see their face. I can read people real good up close, but like on the internet, you can't tell who's who. And like my girl and other people tease me when like catfish people come into my life, like, these women, or like I had a guy say he was Brad Pitt and wanted to do a movie with me after I became popular. I had all these weird things happening. I didn't know how to identify who the hell was who. Now I know what to look for. My girl, Dr. Mary Pass, she's trained me well. She's like, no, look for these signs, all these things, and you'll start knowing not to respond to everybody.
Do you know that doesn't happen the other way? You know that doesn't happen the other way around.
What do you mean?
Men don't fall in love with female prisoners. Only women fall in love with male prisoners. Doesn't happen the other way around.
I don't know. I think I've seen a few cases, like, But anyway, so she was acting weird and would come to my bedroom. He goes to work 10 o'clock. She'd knock on my door, open the door. Hey, Bill, can we talk? And I'm like, I'm on the phone with my fiance in California, and we're not feeling that, And then I just pretend to sleep. And
hold on, back up. How do you have a fiance if we were in prison for 18 years?
Towards the end of my bid, about 3 months before my release, even before I got the show, my friend we used to be vice president of NBC. His name's Tom Madden, and he was one of the executives at NBC in New York. He's got a public relations firm now called Transmedia Group in Boca Raton, and Tom was helping me publicize my book and everything while I was incarcerated. Well, Mary does what I do now, which is work with people who are wrongfully incarcerated, and we work with crime victims, both sides, and we try to help people. Well, she had a client, Dave Reinhardt, in the California Department of Corrections. You guys can go to freedavereinhardt.com. Put it in the description. I'll give you that. I gave you that link. I sent you that. So she had an incarcerated client she wanted some publicity for in California. And Tom told her, hey, my friend and my client and, a guy who writes books, and I was a law clerk, you might want to talk to him also. Maybe he can, you guys can talk and get along, whatever. Maybe he can help give you some guidance. We started talking. She bought my book, Sex and the Serial Killer, My Bizarre Times with Robert Durst, written from the perspective of, despite the salacious title, it's written to help the victims understand and the people that are looking at him understand what he was really all about. So she said when she read that book, she fell in love with me. She knew she had to meet me, and we started writing, talking every day. So for the last 3 months, I would sneak out of my cell, and I'd be on the phone, arguing with gang members, because certain people want to control the phones. And I said, do what you want. I'm using the phone. I'm going home in 3 months. Do what you want. I'm using the phone. Get off the phone. Do what you want. I'm using the phone. So I'd be on the phone with her nonstop, and we got engaged. And so that was this. The rest is history.
All right. So let me get this straight. While you're in prison, you have 2 women that fall head over heels in love with you.
No, more than that. But I only fell in love with me. they like ugly, chubby guys, I guess.
No, they like bad boys, is what they like. That's what they do. And even though they pick the guy that's the bad boy and there's going to be trouble, they don't care. It's unbelievable.
Mary's wonderful. She's a brainiac. She's light years above me, man. She's a data scientist. She's a civilian fraud examiner. She's an expert in nonprofits. She's really a good girl. She's really had a heart for helping people. and she's helped people that are wrongfully incarcerated, and that's what we're doing together now as well.
Okay, so you go. How many episodes is this show?
First season is 10, and it blew up. Like I said, 10.9 million views on TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I don't even know where else to search for the thing, but it's like everywhere, and it's just incredible. I have like millions of fans all of a sudden. There's fan pages, Inmate to Roommate fan pages. One of them, Inmate to Roommate Central, is the one actually I run, and I moderate another one. And the administrator likes me so much, they let me just moderate it to try to get rid of trolls.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about this, man. These cell phones, these smartphones, they didn't exist when I went to prison.
Yeah, I know.
So I'm struggling to figure out to this day how to use my iPhone properly, how to use social. But like my thumbs are killing me. Just for the last year, I'm on it all day and night, connecting with fans and putting my book out there. But I'm learning it, man. It's a whole new world from what I went in from. When I went in, it was the Nokia phone,
Yeah, right. The flip phone. Yeah. All right. So you did 10 episodes. What was the? And this show already aired in August, right?
It aired August through I think October, and the network is thrilled. And I can't tell you what's coming next, but stay tuned.
But there is a season 2.
I can't tell you what's coming next, but stay tuned.
Okay. So what was the end all be all of you and this woman living together in Indiana, and her husband was also with her when you guys were living together?
Right. They have a big, gigantic house on the river and whatever.
Why would her husband agree to do this?
That's what all my fans are asking me. She said, I never had a crush on him, but she's humiliated in her church and across the internet now. And the fans are like, there's so many scenes where it's obvious. I can't even get into them all because I can't give away spoilers or whatever. But there's so many scenes where it's so obvious. Like, I'll give you an example. We go out to eat. First time, it's a sidewalk cafe, like my first day out of prison, my first meal, and there's a waitress. Now, big girl, and I was just being a sarcastic New Yorker. I was trying to be nice. I was trying to just enjoy my life and freedom on all the sights and sounds. And so after she served us, I said, "Oh, she's pretty." Man, her face, if you see the show, her face turned like she'd been into a lime, like that.
Yeah.
In another episode, she said, "I don't appreciate him calling another girl pretty."
Mm-hmm.
Well, wait a minute, I'm not your man. Why would you care who I call pretty? Even my woman didn't care, that I said something like that.
Well, but the husband, what kind of man, what kind of guy was he? Why would he allow this whole thing to go on in his home? Because that baffles me. Because I would never in a million years, you don't know.
You have to. I don't think you've seen it yet. Maybe you see.
No, I haven't seen it. No. I'm definitely watching it after this. That's for sure.
He's a goofball, man. He's a phony, soft dude.
He's a Mama Luke. That's what he is.
Mama Luke, right? And my brother-in-law used to say a hooplehead.
Yeah. Okay, so you do this. You write books. Everything's going well. You have women falling in love with you while you're in prison. You get through this A&E reality show, which is crazy, right? You're in Indiana. You're from Brooklyn, so you go from Brooklyn to prison to this stranger's house in Indiana, and then how do you make the transition after the reality show is over?
It's never ending, man. It's still. I can't get into it, But
don't tell me you're still living there. Don't tell me you're still living.
I'm doing my true crime channel. Okay. I have a TV studio that I'm going to have my own show on another network going out on 3 stations starting soon, an hour per week on a certain day, and my own radio show, my true crime channels, my podcast, all under William Steele True Crime. And everybody, please subscribe. I'm trying to blow these channels up. Check out my books. I appreciate it. So that's what I'm doing. I'm doing speaking appearances. I'm getting invited to churches and universities and law schools, speaking to criminal justice students. All
right. So you can't give us any info on the reality show or what's coming up or even the transition after the reality show?
Transition's been wonderful, man. Every day feels like I just walked out of prison. Every day, every time I go out at nighttime, it's like a surreal experience because I haven't seen nighttime.
No, what I mean is you finished the 10 episodes of the reality show.
Right.
From there, where do you go?
Well, I was offered 4 movie roles in the last few months.
No, I mean, where you move, your fiance,
Oh,
where do you live? How do you go from there?
well, I'm not really obligated to. I'm not in a position to tell you where I live right now
Okay, all right. So let's skip it.
because it's all tied into what I'm doing.
Okay, so let's skip it then. So let's start from the beginning. You're from the same neighborhood in Brooklyn as me. You're from Bensonhurst, Brooklyn.
Bensonhurst, Gravesend. Yep.
Oh, Gravesend. Okay. Well, I had a friend that used to say who was from Gravesend, and he used to say, "You're from the Hearst." No, he used to say, "You're from Benson. I'm from the Hearst."
Right. I
Okay.
went to I went to Lincoln High School, Kingsborough Community College.
Okay. So you went to what kind of kid were you, and what was your family life growing up?
Well, like I said, my mother was mentally ill, in and out of psychiatric hospitals. My father was a very hardworking man with a regular job, and he actually worked for the post office in Manhattan for his whole career.
Hmm.
And then I got him to retire and work with me in real estate. I worked for Century 21, and then I got involved with buying houses with no money down and tax sales and all that. And shortly thereafter, man, I took a bad turn. I don't know
Yeah.
what the hell happened.
But I want to know what your childhood was like, and how you came from this traditional family, and then you turned into this amazing countrywide jewel thief.
Countrywide Julie.
Well, that's what you said, right? You're traveling the
Yeah,
country.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I just I don't take things in I try to take my life serious, but at the same time, if I don't laugh at it and the things I've been through and what's going on, especially in that
Mm.
house I was living in with
Mm.
with these people,
With these
I
crazy
lose my
people.
mind.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
even in prison, I kept my sense of humor, and that's what the fans love about me. Like, oh man, Bill's so funny. We want more of Bill. But
Right.
I grew up, I guess, very much a loner because if somebody says something stupid about my mother's illness, it would be a problem. We'd have a problem. And
Well,
so
of
most of the
course. Yeah.
neighbors were great. Most of the neighbors were great with her. Everybody knew my grandfather. He was from Sicily. So everybody was good with my mom. She'd walk
Mm.
around the neighborhood. We had a dog, a Labrador Retriever named Ralph, and
Mm.
no leash. And he'd walk ahead of her, going. I don't know if you remember Dan's Supermarket on Avenue X back in the day.
Absolutely. Sure.
Yeah, so she'd go to Dan's or Key Food on Avenue X and all that. And so Ralph the whole way, woof, 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 woof,
Right.
protecting her. So that was my childhood and trying to, take care of my mom and look after her. And unfortunately, I have two sisters and I had a falling out with them when I was incarcerated this time because they told my mother, who was mentally ill, that I was dead. They didn't tell her I was in prison. So she signed over everything in Brooklyn, everything in Seaside Heights to my sisters while I was incarcerated. She passed away. They stole 800 grand from me, and I don't care. I'll say it like I forgive my sisters, but it's not cool to know that I'm getting out of prison and be just fine with me coming out destitute. I'm back on my feet, but they put me in a position where I was coming out with nothing, and
Right.
they wouldn't give my mother my letters. Just before her death, I got an envelope full of letters. The captain brings them to me with my sister's handwriting. I don't want to hear from this individual. And I knew, my sister's handwriting. And so I had the police do a welfare check in Staten Island. So we lived in Staten Island at the time.
Hmm.
And the cops refused to go. And I kept badgering them. I said, don't freaking ignore me just because I'm in prison. My mother's mentally ill. My sister's taking advantage. I want her checked on. But by the time they got off their asses to go, my mother was already dead. So
Hmm.
this is what happened, and this is why I ended up in Indiana because my sisters would, they were so afraid because I used to traffic guns and run with a lot of dangerous people. They thought, I was going to harm them, whatever, when I got out, and
Hmm.
there's nothing like that going to happen. But they're scared because they know my history, and
Right.
so I just decided, you know what? I go to Indiana with this pen pal friend of mine, and I told her, I said, look, the situation with my family. I'm going to avoid them for the time being. I try to reconcile with them. There's no reconciling really on their end because the damage is done.
Hmm.
How do you apologize? I don't care about the money. How do you apologize for keeping me from my own mother? When I was her defender, I never took a thing from her, but they have a history of that. You know,
Yeah.
how do you do that to somebody? How do you tell a mentally ill woman, that her only son is dead?
Right.
One time I caught my mother on a Thanksgiving day on a three-way call from prison, and and the house guest at my sister's house answered the phone, and I said, "Hey, is Eleanor there?" Oh, hold on, and got her on the phone. First time I heard my mother's voice in years, And I says, Mommy had said it's Billy, you know. And she started breaking down crying. She screamed, Roxanne told me you were dead. Oh my God, William, where are you? I said, I'm in prison. Don't believe her. I'm fine. I'm going to be out in a few years. I love you. My sister stripped the phone from her on Thanksgiving Day and cursed me out and said she'll have me killed and all this other crap if I ever try to call my mother again.
Okay.
So this is what I went through with family.
I apologize. I'm really sorry about your mom passing.
I appreciate that, man.
That had to be really rough.
Yeah,
But I'm trying to get to your background in Brooklyn and how you go from a young man to this international Jew thief.
I just took it upon myself. I tell you what, if you're looking to really dig that deep, I read a book years ago in the 80s. It was called Secrets of a Super Thief, John McClane. I think his name was Jack McClane, something like that. And this guy was a locksmith who became a burglar in South Florida. And he was I don't know if you know anything about like Fort Lauderdale, Las Olas, Bayview, all those really wealthy areas on the water, intercoastal waterway. And he was describing specifically how he would use his skills to get into things. By this time, I had just become a locksmith, and I already had a little larceny. You know, I was doing some things, but I wasn't really at that scale, and I didn't really realize in those years how easier it would be in South Florida to do what I do. And I actually went. You can't say that movies and books don't influence people because they did. Because that book definitely influenced me to become a jewel and art thief, starting in South Florida, and then from there to Las Vegas and California.
Okay, what's the author's name? What's the guy's name?
It was the book was called Secrets of a Super Thief by Jack McClane.
Okay, I'm with all due respect, William, I'm not interviewing Jack McClane. I'm trying to get to you. So how do you grow up in Brooklyn, go to Kingsborough Community College, and how do you get to the point? How do you tell me the story of how you get to becoming this international jewel thief? Your dad's a straight shooter. He's a mailman for 30 years in the city. Your mom is mentally ill. You come from somewhat of a traditional family. We're from the same neighborhood. So how do you go? What happens? Tell me, like, you're in high school and then you go to
I guess I'm not sure, you know, if you're trying to psychoanalyze me or whatever, but
no, I just want your backstory.
In Brooklyn, I hung out a lot in Brighton Beach. Okay. Brighton Beach at that time was a mix of Russians, Hispanic, Cuban, this and that. Right. A lot of those guys were gang members. So I'm like, in my formative years, like I went to Our Lady of Grace on Avenue W, right? Then I went to Lincoln. But during those years at Lincoln, I was hanging out a lot in Brighton Beach. And all these guys were doing illegal stuff. Gave me an opportunity for easy money, which they were dealing heroin and cocaine. It was a gang I'm not going to name. I don't even think they're around anymore, out of Coney Island. So the leader became a friend of mine, and they would cut their heroin, their cocaine at my house and you know, by Ocean Parkway and Avenue W, and I was selling on weekends there, and I got immersed with illegal things there. I wasn't doing anything major, but I saw the easy money and a lot of other things going on around me, and I kind of got drawn into it. I guess you could say in my case there wasn't a lot of discipline. My mother was mentally ill. My father was the nicest guy in the freaking planet, like super laid back. I never had any discipline, and so I can remember even at a young age, you know, we had friends that we'd go out writing graffiti on the subway. So at 9 years old, I got arrested for graffiti on the subway.
Okay.
So there was always this stuff when I was younger that because I had no real supervision, I just was, you know, running the streets, I guess you'd call it.
Okay.
Until I got my ass together and I decided to go to college and start.
So you're in Brighton Beach and you're running with a bad crew in Coney Island. You're running with a bad crew. What year time period was this?
That's late 70s, early 80s.
Okay. And how old are you at this point?
My teens. I don't know. 16 to 19 or something.
Okay. What made you decide, okay, I got to get away from this. I got to go to college. I got to make something. I had to get away from this crew.
It's a good question. I actually dropped out of Lincoln during this period, Lincoln High School, in my 12th grade. Now, I was with a girl who said, you don't go to college, I don't want to be with you, blah, blah, blah. So I went across the street to Grady, got my GED, and I enrolled in Kingsborough like immediately. So I didn't even miss a beat. So I guess you could say because of her, you know, encouragement at that time, you know. But then
that's a man's strongest drive is a woman, that's for sure.
Right. If she's behind you 100%, I believe we can accomplish anything. If she's not, it's just nothing but aggravation.
Yeah, it's the truth.
Right.
All right. So go ahead. So you're in Kingsborough.
Right. It was in Kingsborough, and then went there. I was taking, I think it was liberal arts at the time. then I started seeing this stuff for this locksmith school and real estate, and I got my interest got distracted from that, and I went into real estate and this locksmith school.
Mm.
I wanted to be this guy like that do things for good. I wanted to be like the old Mission Impossible with Peter Graves. They do anything for the country and for the greater good and all that. Captain America type person. I wanted to be that. I really had a good heart. I wanted to help people, so I wanted to learn these skills to help people.
Mm-hmm.
I quickly perverted those skills because I developed a cocaine problem.
Mm.
My friend Sammy, he in 1985, he was going to a nightclub out on Long Island. I've never been big into clubs, bars. I don't drink. I don't smoke weed, but I used a lot of coke. But before I started using coke, I had got him a job with me in Century 21, and he says, "Look, there's a new club opening up." I had gone with him before to the Red Parrot. He knew the owners or whatever in Manhattan. He says, "You want to come out to Long Island with me?" And I said, "Sure, I'll go." But then I broke the plans at the last minute, and he was a notoriously poor driver, and he got killed in a car crash after he was coming out of the club. So I was just totally guilt-stricken that, one, I stood him up, and two, that I was supposed to be driving. He'd probably be alive. So even though things happen in life and we can't decide what God is going to do with you or me, in the next minute, back then it was a big burden of grief, And I looked up some friends I told you about from Brighton Beach, and to tell them, because they knew Sammy, and I said, "Hey, Sammy died in a car crash, blah blah blah," and they didn't seem too concerned about him, but they said, "Hey, do me a favor, ride us into Lower Manhattan," which is at that time Rivington Street. I think Rivington Street, Lower East Side is like really nice now, but back in those days, there was nothing like dope. It was dope holes and crack and all kinds of shit. So I drove them down there, and they get in this shit, and they're smoking it in my car. We're driving back to Brooklyn, and they say, "Hey, you're depressed about Sam. You take a hit,
What were they smoking? Was it?
They were snorting and smoking freebase crack, and I tried it, man, and it was off to the races. I got stuck on it pretty bad, and that lasted for a while. I started getting in trouble, but then I had been a locksmith in Manhattan at a place called Atlas Locksmith, which was on Church Street, across the street from the World Trade Center, about a block or two up. And so I did a lot of master keying and alarm systems in the World Trade Center complex.
So at this point, you're a full-time locksmith.
Right.
Okay.
And so I'm actually working for a firm on Church Street. It was called Atlas Locksmith. I don't know if they're still around. But then I had a company called Crime Control Security Systems. So I was installing alarm systems. And so when I developed my cocaine habit, I started going back and hitting places that I installed things for.
Well, I'm getting a little confused. You're working full-time as a locksmith, but you're doing security alarms as well?
I'm doing alarms mostly in Brooklyn, mostly private homes, alarm systems. Yeah.
Okay. And so you're doing this at the same time. You're working full time, and then you have like a little side business doing alarms.
Right.
Okay. All right. So then your friend dies, and you hook up with this crew again from Brighton Beach, and you use drugs and you hang out with this crew all over again.
Right. I was doing phenomenal with my life by this point. I was one of the top salespeople at Century 21. Very clean cut. Doing my thing. Right?
You were in real estate. How many jobs did you have, Will?
I mean, I don't think I've held many actually, but I was working Century 21, and I attended a bunch of seminars about buying real estate with no money down, and all these. I was getting involved with that. I was on an infomercial for about my success in buying a property with very little money down for the father of the infomercial. It's called Tony Hoffman. His name was the national superstars of real estate, whatever. They used to do seminars back in the day teaching you this.
Right.
So they had me on one of their infomercials. I for time back then wanted to get into acting. I went to Barbizon Acting and Modeling School when I was in my young teens, and I did a movie with Sid Caesar and Dick Van Dyke in Manhattan. It was called Found Money, but it was just an extra. But at the same time, I talked to everybody, so I spent my whole day hanging out with Dick Van Dyke, back in whatever year that was, 82 or something. But I never stayed with it. Years later, when I was on the run in Las Vegas, I did Crime Story while I was a fugitive with Dennis Farina, Andrew Dice Clay. But I was also the cocaine dealer on set, so they would love having me around because, everybody wanted that guy around in 1985, 86. And so I was dealing a lot of coke in Vegas. I was on a run, and the detectives were like, "I watch that show every week. I didn't even recognize you," because I just had small little parts. But then I did a movie with Robert De Niro called Midnight Run, just a little background part, and then Elvis and Me, based upon a book that Priscilla Presley wrote about her life with Elvis. So
Okay.
that's it's going back and forth on these stories, but
Yeah. So you were doing real estate, locksmith, securities, and you were acting.
right, but
Okay.
not really even acting, just mostly background and dealing coke, so,
Yeah. Yeah.
and doing burglaries, all over the place. Right?
And you were doing. You had a lot of time on your hands, man. Shit. I can't.
Yeah,
I can't ever work a full time job and do this podcast without falling asleep at work.
yeah.
All right. So what did you eventually get arrested for?
I eventually went to prison in Florida for burglaries, grand theft autos, um, dealing. I think it was like dealing stolen property, and then the escape. So it was more than one thing, and it just kind of accumulated. So
So how did you wind up in Florida?
Florida, family members had moved down there, years before in the '80s. A lot of people, as you know, from Brooklyn and up north, go to the East Coast. Boca Raton, Coral Springs, Fort Lauderdale. And
Okay.
so family had already moved down there. So I went, and at that time was my brother-in-law and my sister. He's passed away now, but so I was going back and forth anyway. Who doesn't like Florida? So I
Yeah.
decided to
No.
go. I decided between this book I read about this guy making so much money there. When I was visiting my sister, I took off. Rented a car, put a stolen tag on it, and I went to see if what he was saying was true. And I probably made a couple $100 grand in a few days. And I was like, wow, that's pretty easy to do a burglary around here compared to New York. So
Yeah. All right. Sounds like a crazy story. So tell me about the escape. How did you wind up escaping from prison? Which prison was it?
well, I escaped numerous times. I got caught once. What I would do is I'd leave, go hook up with a girl or do what I want to do and come back. And it was like lower security facilities. And the time that I left and didn't come back, it was, again, we're working out in the community, nothing fancy. But under Florida law, it's still escape. We're working 20 miles from the prison on the side of the road. And um, I was already planning to go. I had my death in the family. My brother-in-law Dennis passed away. No one told me about it, and I wasn't in my right mind. And I had like 3 years left to go on a 10-year sentence. And it was the stupidest thing I ever did, man. Looking back at it, I'm not here to go up on the time or that escape, but it was really stupid because in Florida, it's so backwards down there. They can give you up to 30 years for walking off the work. It's not like other states where you might get, 6 months or something, absconding. Over there, it's straightforward escape. So we went out to work. I told the supervisor I didn't feel good. He says, "Well, go relieve yourself under the bridge." We were working on a bridge in Martin County, and so when I went to go pretend I was doing that, they were dumping a bunch of dirt down below, and I told the guys from my prison, I said, "Hey, just in case he forgets, I'm over here, using the restroom." And so they're like, we don't need to hear that. They were over there carrying on and enjoying their few minutes they had off, from the work. I went up the other side of the bridge, stripped off all my prison clothes, rolled them up, ran up the other side, and the boss was like this, looking down at the work crew down below him. I came up directly behind him on the other side of 4 lanes of traffic, hit the fence, and started going through backyards. It was a very affluent area. Tiger Woods was building a house there, but it was like multi-million-dollar home. So I'm running there, and I wanted to get out of the area because I know they bring dogs right away. They're going to bring dogs. They're going to seal off the area. It's Florida, especially. They're going to bring tons of police. So I saw a meter reader. He went to go check. He was on a bicycle. He was walking between houses. So I was about 2 streets away from where I walked off the work detail, and he has to call to the prison every 15 minutes saying that he has a visual on everybody on the squad. I think there was 10 of them. There was 10 of us, and he had to give a visual. There was 2 squads. It's, I think, 5 per squad, but he had to do that every 15 minutes because of so many previous escapes. Used to be every 2 hours. So I knew when I saw him make the call that I had 15-minute headway before he noticed me missing. Come to find out, he was calling in his checks. I found out from my discovery later, every 15 minutes saying he saw everybody, but I had been gone already close to 2 hours. He never saw me. He was calling and falsified, reports back to the prison. But anyway, and I could prove that because I grabbed the meter reader's bike, jumped on it, and he's chasing me. Hey, screaming, and I just escaped, from prison. and I'm riding this bike, and the man's chasing me, and he calls 911. And they say, well, we're not going to come out there for that. Just come to the police station to make a report. Little did they know it was the prison escapee that stole the bike, or they would have come quicker.
Mm-hmm.
So the time he made that call to the time my boss reports me missing, the work detail, the officer, there's like an hour and a half lag, which really showed that he wasn't doing his job. He was a hell of a nice guy, and I apologize to him to this day, but he wasn't doing his job. Anyway, so I get away. I go about a half mile down. I pull in. I had stolen a screwdriver. I took a lot of stuff out with me that I had hidden in my shorts, all my phone numbers. I even took a candy bar. I took some cigarette lighters just in case I got stuck out in the woods for a few days. So I had all this minor stuff with me, and I was going to just colonize a car. I was going to steal, the old school GM with the tilt wheel. You could crack the steering column and you could start the car up pretty quick. So I went in this complex looking for a certain type of car, and I couldn't find one. I knew I needed to get out of here, because even though I was on the bike and I felt that I broke the sentry out for the dogs, I knew I needed to get a lot further because I wasn't that far.
What year was this around?
That was 2005.
Okay, all right. How many times did you wind up escaping from prison? Because you said you escaped several times.
Before that, numerous times. I used to leave. Like I said, I used to leave and meet whoever, do whatever, and come back before count time.
So a dozen, half a dozen?
At least maybe 2 dozen. So
yeah, okay. William, I really appreciate you coming on, man. I want you to plug everything that you need to plug. You got True Crime, official William Steele True Crime podcast.
Sure.
You have your books. You have WilliamSteeleAuthor.com. How many books did you write?
So far, 2.
Okay.
Ghislaine, Sensational and Pure. I knew
Right.
Maxwell, so I wrote a book about her.
Mm-hmm.
My other 2 books are coming out here in a few weeks, and I'm trying to earn an honest living, man. So I appreciate if people go to my William Steele True Crime stuff, subscribe, and buy the books for the holidays, or somebody loves true crime in your family. There's more to come, and there's more to come. I was offered 4 movie roles, so I don't know which one I'm going to take, if any. But I never set out really to necessarily be an actor, but everything's I'm being blessed right now. So also, if somebody knows somebody incarcerated who's wrongfully incarcerated, look me up. William Steele on Facebook, Messenger, whatever. I'm on there constantly, and if we can help, we will. If we could just shed a spotlight on the case.
Great. I mean, that's fantastic, man. I really appreciate you coming on and taking the time out to let me interview you, man. It sounds like I'm definitely going to try and watch that. That was Inmate to Roommate. Is that right?
Inmate to Roommate on A&E. If you guys don't have A&E, it's streaming on A&E as well.
Okay.
It's one of the top reality shows in the country. Just go to play.aetv.com. They unlocked a bunch of episodes. Click into shows, and then Inmate to Roommate. You can see many of the episodes for free there. And I appreciate you having me on. I can't believe an hour went by already.
Okay, no problem, man. Absolutely. Are you kidding? It's my pleasure. So all those things are going to be in the description area down below, so people could just click and take a look at everything you've got to offer. And man, all the best of luck to you, man. Really, it's really interesting.
Thank you, John. Hey, appreciate you inviting me on, and hopefully we'll do some more in the future.
Absolutely. You got it, man. We'll keep in touch.
Thank you, everybody, for watching.